Well, hello and welcome to a conversation interview thing. I'm Andy Phillips, and today our very special guest is Geoff Keighley. Geoff, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Andy. Great to. I'm a patron, so now I'm like, is that one of the benefits? I get to be on your interview show?
All my patrons get special interviews.
I was gonna say
it's been established. So most people know you as either a host of game content or either as the creator of the Game Awards itself. But maybe not a lot of people know your roots. And so I was wondering if you could kind of like tell us how you got to where you are now.
My roots are in Canada.
Yeah?
Maple Tree. No. I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and just started playing video games when I was a kid. I was really lucky, like the early days when I was young, my mother did a lot on computers early on. She did a lot of accounting stuff, so we just had computers around the house. And I remember like learning how to read with a program called Reader Rabbit, which was like an IBM PC program.
Yeah.
Long before you probably were even born. But I learned through sort of computers, and then always had games when I was growing up. Me and my brother would play a lot of games on like computers. A lot of the old adventure games I grew up really loving, like King's Quest and Space Quest and Leisure Suit Larry and all these adventure games that I was really drawn to the stories in these games and these sort of choose your own adventure books that came to life kind of in a video game format. So I played all that stuff and loved it. And then one day I wrote a letter to one of the game companies I love, Sierra Online, and I put it in the mail and said, hey, I love your games, how do you make them? And I never thought I'd get a response, but then like 2 weeks later, I got a letter at home when I was like 12 years old from the game company saying, thanks for your letter, Geoff. We'd love to tell you how we make our games and actually show you. And here are some floppy disks for one of our games. Do you want to be a beta tester and just sort of try it? So I volunteered when I wasn't doing homework to playing video games. And then I was on CompuServe, which was like an early pre-internet service, sharing hints and tips about those games because I had played them through. I knew how to complete them. And then one day an editor from a magazine noticed my posts online and said, wow, this kid really seems to know a lot about games. Do you want to come write for our magazine? And kind of all went from there.
Wow. And you were 14 around this time?
Yeah, I was, I think I was 13 when I first started beta testing. And probably my first published article was when I think I was 14, in a magazine called Computer Games Strategy Plus. I previewed the game Sim Farm, which was a sequel to SimCity from Will Wright, the creator of SimCity. So that was like my first published article that I still have somewhere at home.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. So jumping to modern day,
yes.
Obviously Game Awards are coming up this year and it's been a totally different beast for you.
Yes.
What's that build-up been like? How have you started to kind of prep for the 2020 version of the Game Awards?
Yeah, it's obviously a different year. You know, we've done the show, this is our 7th year of the Game Awards, and for the past 6 years, we've been at the Microsoft Theater in LA. We've had a kind of a format to what we're doing, right? And we have to think about which games are gonna be on stage and who's gonna be on stage, what bands are gonna play. But we have a format, and this year, we had to kind of reinvent everything due to COVID. But it's created opportunities for us to do the show in different ways. We're gonna have content from London and Tokyo, which I'm really excited about, being in 3 continents with the show, which has always been sort of a dream of mine. Like I always wanted to do the Game Awards one year from Tokyo, and we're kind of doing it in a way this year. And it's created opportunities for us to kind of involve other talent and people that normally can't travel to LA to be a part of the show. But yeah, it's been stressful, and certainly with the pandemic continuing to go on, we knew very early on that we were going to have to change the format. So back in March, of course, I was hopeful, like, oh, maybe by the summer, everything will be good, we'll be fine by December. And now, obviously, we're not in great shape as on the COVID front. Yeah. So we're doing things more virtually, and you'll see a lot of the nominees appear in video windows, similar to what the Emmys did this year. But we'll still have lots of big news. The show will be live. We have a big live set. I'll be there. So, I always say to people, the things you really care about at Game Awards are awards, world premieres, music performances and surprises, and all 4 of those will be part of the show this year.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you mentioned the international aspect to it as well.
Yeah.
And you've also been doing these Zoom calls with fans and with special guests.
You've been in a few of them.
Yeah. From your perspective, how do you think that's been going? Has that been a rewarding experience?
Yeah, it's been super fun. So I think one Friday night like this, like one Friday at 5 o'clock, I was like sitting home, I'm like, you know what, maybe I should just do a Zoom call with a bunch of fans. So I just thought the idea, and I've been thinking about it a lot this year. I've been spending some time studying what people were doing with Zoom, and there were a lot of bands I like in the UK that were starting to do these meetups with fans as part of the record stores, Banquet Records, that I really love in London. And I attended some of those, and it was just, there was an energy to like going in these Zoom rooms and just looking through like the gallery view of like all these people. And I love the energy of that, right? Of like live people. So I sat in some of those with some of my friends who are bands and artists in the UK. And I did that, and I'd also gone to a bunch of kind of virtual magic shows this year, because I'm kind of into magic. And so I'd studied sort of what people had done there. And I'm like, I think there's something interesting to do with the gaming community, because, you know, we've all been somewhat isolated this year. It's been kind of a tough year for all of us, and I'm normally traveling like 300 days of the year, going to lots of places, and this year I've kind of just been here in LA. So I miss the human-to-human contact with a lot of the fans that I run into at Comic-Con and a lot of these other events around the world. So I'm like, yeah, let me just do a call. So I put up a tweet saying, hey, this Sunday I'm doing a Zoom call. Join me. And we had like thousands of people that wrote back these letters about what the Game Awards meant to them. And it's become a really special thing for me, and really inspiring to like meet our actual fans around the world. And that's the thing that has really blown me away, and you've seen it. Like, I mean, we have people calling in from Morocco and Iraq. There was a guy a few weeks ago that was calling in from the hospital in Iraq, where he was in the hospital because of COVID, and he was like part of the call. And then there were a lot of people from India, a girl from Russia last week. And it's just so cool to see how global video games are and how the stuff we do impacts the world. And it's really meaningful to me to see the real fans. They're super thoughtful, and I look forward to it now. Every Sunday we've been doing it. We've had some amazing guests come by. We have some awesome guests coming in the weeks ahead. So yeah, it's just like a little thing I did. It's like there's no production team behind it. It's just me kind of doing my own thing, and it's been really meaningful to me personally, but also I think really instructive to everyone that works on the show to just kind of hear what the fans want us to do. I mean, you've been in them. It sounds like you've had fun, right? Yeah,
I mean, from a fan perspective, it's definitely been cool seeing other people's kind of input and their kind of different perspectives on, and definitely kind of seeing the special guests. For instance, you had like Phil Spencer on, but then you also had Ashley Johnson.
Yeah.
So you've got like a wide range of like execs to, you know, actresses within the field. So, you know, from a fan perspective, it's been really cool. But it's good to hear that like you as kind of the person that puts it up has, you know, kind of gotten it back too.
No, it's definitely, it's meant a lot to me. It was meant as a 360 feedback session, really, to like hear what do people want from the show. And we scrape the people that apply are all off my Twitter account. I think Twitter often is seen as like toxic in some ways, right? Of just like a lot of negativity. And like, you know, out of all the people on Twitter, there are lots of really like intellectual, smart, incredible people that are, you know, in my feed that aren't necessarily saying anything, but they show up in these calls, and it's been just empowering to like feel that community and the fact that they devote their time. And I mean, a lot of people come back week after week, and we go for, I mean, that week with Phil Spencer and Gabe Newell, I think we went for like 2.5 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, I you know, don't really have time to do it, but I make time because it's been so meaningful and it's meant a lot to people. So yeah, we've done those. I think it'll end up being like almost like 3 months by the time we get to the show this week.
Wow. So we're talking, you know, obviously 2020 has shifted kind of how a lot of people work.
Yeah.
Video game industry, you know, as well. Do you think that this is just a temporary change in things, or do you think this more digital approach will kind of be a lasting impact on it? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, you know, a lot of my career I've done things kind of work from home, and like, you know, I've never had like a traditional office that we go into, and even when we make the Game Awards, we kind of all come together for a few weeks in an office and then do the show. This year we're doing things more virtually. And you know, I think a lot about the creative process of building a game and how collaborative that is. And it's, you know, making games it's a lot like making an animated movie, and that it's sort of like a whole team of people all coming together. And I think it can be done work from home, but you know, it's a lot harder to just collaborate when I think, you know, you're over a Zoom call or on Slack or something like that. I think there is a power just like people getting in a room, you know, workshopping, like what are we doing with this game? How do we figure things out? So I think it's like Gabe Newell on the call a few weeks ago said that productivity is like kind of 50 to 75% at best of what it used to be. So I think people are slower at doing things. And I used to be, you know, in an office, you could like walk down the hall and ask someone something. Now you get like, I got to set up a Zoom call to like ask them this one question or text them or whatever. But yeah, so I think it's a shift that is semi-permanent. I think what's ultimately going to happen is that there will still be moments in time where people gather as a group, but the whole like 9 to 5, everyone being in, you know, having to be in an office, I think that's gone. But I could see like, hey, every week we're all gathering on Fridays for like this team meeting, and then the rest of the time we're going to work from home. And you know, I've never really been in a situation where I have like some long commute to work every day, but I know a lot of people watching this, other folks have to like commute for, you know, an hour or two each way. And that's just a lot of time when, you know, you could be doing things at home. So I definitely think that shift is semi-permanent, that I don't think we're ever going back to the way things were. But I do think the physical interaction is going to come back. And I'm a big believer, like when we get post-pandemic, I think like live music, live events, there's going to be such like an urgency and excitement around like gathering again, that like, you know, Coachella 2022 is hopefully going to be a rager.
So we've briefly touched on it, but for you personally, what is kind of a typical day? Because obviously you wear a lot of hats. You run a Game Awards show that happens every year, but you also are involved with kind of the development or just kind of the, you get to see a lot of behind the scenes of the video game world before you know it comes to the public's eye. So what does a typical day for you kind of look like? Or is there even a typical day?
Yeah, it's another good question. Every day is different. Look, it's, you know, I work incredibly hard, and I just, you know, I say that, but it's like I also feel like I haven't really worked a day in my life. Like I love what I do. But yeah, I mean, you know, I work 7 days a week, probably, you know, 18-hour days. Like I'm just kind of always on. So there's a lot of personal sacrifice in sort of doing that for me. But I'm proud to do it because I'm really honored to have the opportunity I have to, you know, share this industry with so many people. So yeah, days really vary. I mean, in a typical year, I really travel a lot and visit, you know, game studios and people around the world. This year is atypical in that regard. But yeah, most of my days now it's a lot of Zoom calls. You know, I don't know, probably like, you know, 16 to 18 kind of meetings every half hour, just sort of talking to people. And it depends on the time of year. So like this time of year, a lot of it is like working with the sponsors of the show, working with talent, working with the music. Like today I had a couple calls about the orchestra and what we're doing for the awards this year. And then had a call with one of the sponsors of the show, and I was meeting with some of the game companies that are doing premieres and announcements in the show. So yeah, a lot of it is external facing stuff. Me just sort of sitting on like Zoom calls, talking to folks. And again, you know, the days extend into nights a lot. Right now, just sort of working on the show. And it's emotionally, it's such a unique journey you go through producing a show like this, because everything comes down, you know, your year really is defined by these 2 hours in December, and you know, you kind of only get one shot to like make it great. So there's a lot of pressure, and I get, you know, more and more stressed as we sort of get closer to the actual event. And you know, you just kind of run out of time, right? It's like you just, you know, it's like Lin-Manuel says, you know, you write like you're running out of time. It's like, you know, you produce like you're running out of time, and you really do, right? You get down to like, oh, I only have 82 hours until the show. It's like, what's going to get done, what's not going to get done. So yeah, it just gets increasingly hectic. But you know, having done it for so many years, you know, I love the opportunity to do it. And again, I've like, you know, been working on when I first wrote my first article is like I worked on the first ever video game awards show in 1994 when I was 14.
Wow.
Which was called Cybermania 94. Here from Universal Studios Hollywood, hosted by Leslie Nielsen and Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Oh, wow.
So I've been doing these like sort of video game award shows things in different, did G4, I did Spike, now I do my own. But yeah, I've been around this for so many years. There's a bit of a shorthand to how we do it all.
Yeah, and I don't mean to add more stress to your plate, but obviously you're a person that has made a lot of waves within the video game world.
Yeah.
What are maybe some future goals? I mean, obviously it's a big accomplishment with the Video Game Awards, but do you see any sort of next step either to the Video Game Awards, you personally, 5-year, 10-year plan, anything like that?
Yeah, I've never been someone that has like subscribed to like having like a real master plan, and like people always say, what was just your goal to do this? So it's like, no, it just naturally kind of happened, and I've learned in my life you sort of just have to be patient with things, and organically things just sort of grow and happen, and if they do, great. If they don't, they don't. But that's just a lesson in life, I think. But yeah, for me, I'm really proud of what we've built with Game Awards. It's a lot of work, and I'm heavily involved in all aspects of it. So at some point you build something that's successful and it means a lot to you, but you also know that to maintain it at the level you want it to be, there's a lot of pressure, and it takes up a lot of your available space, right? So it's just sort of like you look at your year and it's like, well, 8/10 of my year is probably already consumed with this thing, and it's a yearly thing, right? So it's like, there's not a lot of bandwidth to do the other things, right? And I always yearn for that year where I'm like, cool, like I'm gonna have all this time to do other things. But like this year, I wrote a book about the making of Half-Life Alyx, which was really cool. A digital book, which I was proud of. So that was kind of my early months of my pandemic was really kind of writing that. I started writing that in Paris in February before the lockdown, and then came back to LA, and I've been here ever since. So I tend to try and do a few other projects a year. I wish I could take on more, but Game Awards is so important to me, and I'm so involved, it's hard to find the bandwidth. But yeah, longer term, I have thoughts about things I want to do. I think the Game Awards means something to people and how it kind of represents the people that play games and make games. And, there's a meaning to that. So it's like, how do we roll that forward? And my whole life and career has really been devoted to celebrating this art form, which I think is the biggest, most powerful form of entertainment in the world. So I think the stuff you see me do in the future will build off of that to some degree. And I've always really exclusively bet on gaming as my career. Like I started, when I was writing for Time magazine, I started writing some articles about other companies, and a big story on a feature on Cirque du Soleil and other companies back in the day. But I always kind of came back to games, and I think the rest of my career will definitely be video game related.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested in the metaverse, some of the things we've done in Fortnite, what we did with Tenet, what we did with J.J. Abrams for Star Wars last year, kind of these big live events. I think games are going to become the next social network, and I think we're going to see this interesting cross-pollination between social networks and gaming, and I think you're seeing a little bit of that with like AR and Snapchat kind of moving and gamifying kind of the social platforms, and games becoming a little more social as gathering places. So I think there's some interesting things inside of that excite me.
Yeah.
From kind of a programming perspective as a producer, I've never really wanted to make a game, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing people always ask me. It's like, oh, when are you going to make your game? It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. But I do think the games and game technology powering entertainment experiences, and The Mandalorian, for instance, is like shot with Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
So I think there's something interesting inside of that. And then, I think a lot about how to evangelize the positive benefits of gaming in this industry to the wider world. So I think you'll see a lot of my work in the next decade will be around that, and thinking of ways to kind of take what the Game Awards represents, but turn it into more of a year-round celebration of games. I don't have a master plan or like here's a PDF of what I'm doing. It's just sort of those are the thought bubbles that ruminate through my head, and then I kind of have to figure out how to take that and translate that into reality and try and have some semblance of a life around all that.
No, absolutely. And kind of taking a step back and looking at video games as a whole and kind of the industry Do you think that VR, for example, is the next big step, or do you think we're already in the mix of that and there's already a new step ahead of us? Where do you think the video game world is going next?
Yeah, I think VR is part of it. AR is a part of it as well. So, the idea of like games blending with the real world. But I actually think the metaverse stuff, if people watching this have read Neil Stephenson, Snow Crash, and this idea of kind of like a holodeck or this sort of virtual world that you can access using gaming technology. And I don't, VR to me is somewhat limiting because it's like, it's about wearing goggles and being immersive. And I think, it's immersive to me when you watch Travis Scott's Fortnite concert on your phone, and that is another version of gaming. So I think what I look at gaming is not just being defined by competitive experiences. I think, what I call light touch interactivity, I think is the next phase of gaming, where it's just like game technology is going to power experiences, whether that's a game show or whether that's a comedy show, or like Fall Guys is a great example, just like a fun game, right? That you're just like running around and it's competitive, but it's not pixel accurate, shooting and things like that. So I think the next evolution for games will be these like shared spaces where we can gather using gaming technology to have fun with each other. And there may be a VR or AR version of that, but I think this industry, needs to grow to billions and billions more players. And VR is exciting, but I think it's going to be a subset of that.
For sure. Just to wrap up our conversation interview thing today, you obviously are kind of get a first look at a lot of games to come out every year. Do you personally have a favorite game that came out this year? If so, can you say?
I get in trouble when I answer those questions because I have to be impartial. But yeah, look, it's been a great year for games. I guess I'm somewhat partial to Half-Life Alyx because I spent a lot of time with the studio while they were finishing that game. So I love that game, a VR game. But I grew up writing about and covering the Half-Life games when I was like in 1997 and 8. I went up to Valve when they were just founding that company in Seattle and have kind of been with them for the past 20, 25 years. So it's been super meaningful to me, that game, and what it means for the art form. And yeah, I mean, I've had Fall Guys was tons of fun. I'm playing a bunch of PS5 stuff right now, which is like super fun. Cyberpunk I'm excited to play. So yeah, it's been a good year for games overall. I don't know that, like Last of Us was great. I mean, it's like this industry, one of the reasons I'm so excited about it, why I love the Game Awards, is that games stand at the intersection of technology and entertainment. And what that means is that they always get better, right? It's like the entertainment always gets better, the graphics get better, the immersion gets better, the AI gets better. And that means that like every year the games get better and better. So I like games this year, but next year they're gonna be even better. And that forward momentum and excitement, I think, is what has been so infectious for me about games, and why I love them so much, is just they're all constantly improving.
Gotcha. Just a quick closer.
Yeah, what closer you got?
Rolling off of that one, you've talked about the games this year, but is there a game throughout your whole life that has either affected you or inspired you that you keep wanting to continue being involved with the video game world? Which, if there is one, was there one that kind of inspired you to continue down this road?
Half-Life for sure, because I've, when I covered that in 1997, 1998, I had no idea how big a phenomenon that game was going to be and how much it would mean to people. So I still have like all my old beta discs that they would send to me, these gold burned CD-ROMs that I would play. And that was kind of throughout college. Did that. So that franchise has meant a lot to me. It was gone for a number of years. They didn't make any more. And then this year they brought it back, which was really cool. So that's probably the biggest one to me. I mean, there's certain game franchises I love. Like I love the BioShock series. I'm sad they haven't had one of those in a while. I tend to love story-driven games, and I get pulled into the characters and the narrative. I'm not a big, Call of Duty multiplayer guy, or even Fortnite multiplayer. Like I'm more interested in what Fortnite's doing with kind of emergent storytelling with their narrative events that they do. So yeah, I think Half-Life's probably the most kind of seminal game to me in terms of its impact and excitement around it. But I'm blessed that I get to work with all these game studios on different games and different projects. And it's fun to be able to see these things sometimes years before the public does. And then I'm honored when they ask us to help them announce their game at the Game Awards. So it all kind of works together in some ways.
Love that. Well, Geoff, thank you so much for taking the time.
That's all we got, Andy?
If you have anything to add to the fans, I know they'd love to hear from you, but...
No, this has been fun, and I'm honored to be on your channel. And it's like this time of year is always very emotional for me because it's like we build this show, and I know how much it means to a lot of people out there. And especially this year, I think everyone's had, a challenging year, and we all need to just be kind to each other and celebrate, what gaming means to all of us. And that's something I think in a year when a lot of other forms of entertainment have been challenged, right? I mean, it's like not as many movies coming out, not as many live shows, or no live shows really in the music front. Broadway, I love, incredible live theater, and I haven't seen live theater since February. I was in London and saw a bunch of shows then, just looking for inspiration, and it's like I miss all that stuff. So games, I think, have really kind of galvanized all us and become a sense of place. So I think that's what you'll see at the Game Awards, is we're hoping to build a show that has sort of deep personal meaning to it. And yeah, there's lots of marketing for games, but I hope the community feels like they can self-identify with the show as being something for them. So that's what we're going to try, and people will let us know what they think. It's the internet.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Well, thank you again, and looking forward to this year's show.
All right. Yeah, it's coming soon.
All right. Stay tuned, December 10th.
That's right.